Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. So one last reference to, I'm not going to interact with anybody who doesn't believe that doxing people, that is, using their real name when they have screen names for the purpose of threatening their security. People who do this are really bad people. And if you're not able to say that, if you don't believe that, then I really have no interest in communicating with you, because you really have to be way too stupid to do physics. I mean, physics is going to be way out of your reach if you can't even figure out that there's absolutely no good reason for, in any argument, somebody to use doxing as a argument technique. Okay? No. So if you can't do anything about it, you won't fix it, you won't be a stand against it. So that's the only way the internet stays decent, is that the people using it have to protect it. And if you're not going to protect it from assholes, then I don't think you're a good person. And I think you're a menace to the internet, frankly. And so I won't respond to people who are, in fact, stupid and evil. All right, so just letting people know you have to do something about it. If you're not going to do anything about it, then we're not going to communicate. All right, again, I really don't see the problem. I mean, I don't see any legitimate people giving it any quarter, okay? Anybody making reasonable arguments on the internet does not allow people to dox their enemies, okay? That's a long-held tradition among decent, civilized internet participants. So it's asking so little from you. And if you can't muster it, then fuck you. Alright, so I'll deal with a couple of comments by somebody I think I'll just label Doopy Fall For It. Okay, so that's his name. It says station of play, but it really means Doopy Fall For It. Because he's just talking absolute shit. Alright, so directly tying kinetic energy to fuel consumption can be challenging. 16 times the fuel to go 4 times as fast. Now, that doesn't sound like that's a challenging experiment, frankly. That's a pretty dramatic effect. It seems you ought to be able to see that one pretty easy. No problem. You get up to twice the speed, you're using 4 times the fuel. You get up to 3 times the speed, you're using 9 times the fuel. And then 4 times the speed, you're using 16 times the fuel. Yeah, that seems pretty easy. Alright, anyway, due to the many influences and variables involved, so we know we can reduce the influences and variables just using pendulums and things like that. We can get rid of friction, and we can even get rid of the air if we have to. But we know in these cases it doesn't matter. But some indirect evidence can be found. So another lie. Okay, they just keep saying they have this evidence. They don't have any such evidence. In the fact that fuel efficiency for most cars decreases significantly. What does significantly mean? Well, what the fuck are you talking about? Yes, the fact is that air resistance does become significant when you change your speed from 10 to 50. No doubt about that. Okay, there's terminal velocity, and frankly, at 100 miles an hour, you're already achieving your terminal velocity. So, yeah, air resistance becomes significant. So what? What does that have to do with your theory? 16 times the fuel to go 4 times as fast. Again, you're not going to hide that somewhere. It's certainly significantly, I don't think they meant by significantly that it's even twice the fuel consumption, frankly. I mean, twice beyond the normal. The fact that it takes more fuel to go twice as fast obviously takes twice as much fuel. Okay. Above 50, which aligns with the idea, so it doesn't align with it at all. So just lie some more, that more energy and thus more fuel is required to achieve higher speed. So just complete mush. I mean, this is, it's complete lying mush, okay, having nothing to do with the subject. The fact is, in 350 years of this wacky, silly, nonsense theory, you can't produce any good evidence that any of that crap about how fucking much fuel you need has anything to do with reality. Okay. Thus, per the U.S. Department of Energy, this is so where's your link? Okay, and let me see what they mean by significantly. Okay, what's a significantly? 1/4? Oh, it's 33%? It's supposed to be 16 times, not 33%. Okay. Also, increasing speed is known to have quadratic effects. So this is known, he says. It's known by who? And increasing speed? What is that? You can't even figure out that you're supposed to say doubling the speed? So, I mean, this doesn't even make any, it's so vacuous in the sense that also increasing speed. No, we're talking about real numbers. You can't even come close to assigning a real number here somewhere. I mean, this is just such fucking goop. Goop physics. All right. Also, increasing speed is known to have quadratic effect on the severity of car crashes. So where is this known from? Obviously, it isn't shown in any of the Mythbusters experiments where they actually took cars and crashed them into brick walls. Didn't show up there at all. Okay. So while there might be a single direct experiment that confirms, so while there might not be a simple direct experiment that confirms, yeah, that's right, there's simple direct experiments that actually prove doesn't happen. So that's what the simple direct experiments indicate. Frankly, the few that are around, that's what they indicate, that this is all just baby talk. That this is all just crap you made up because you believe it because you're a doopy fool. Okay. Double the speed requires 4 times the fuel. The underlying physics principles are well established. So again, how are they well established? The whole point I'm making is there's no fucking evidence. So well established by what? By what experiment do you well establish that it takes 16 times the fuel to go 4 times as fast? What fucking experiment well establishes that? I mean, just an amazing lie. Okay. That any of this has been well established by a damn thing. Okay. And have been validated in numerous ways that you won't list here or anywhere because it's just not true. God, how do you people sleep with yourselves? God, you're just such pathetic liars. So all these arguments have been made, and they just ignore the arguments, right? Well, it only takes 2 units of work to double the compression of a spring, so how the fuck could that be 4 units of work? How can I get 4 units of energy if I only do 2 units of work? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe I should argue against that. And explain how that's really possible. If I'm going to sit there and believe in this crap, maybe I should try to figure out how it could possibly be correct. All right. So we're going to remove this since I did read this tripey lie. I mean, really, it's just lying. You're just sitting here lying, telling us that, oh, yeah, we already proven it all, so you don't need to prove it. Now, where'd you prove it all? God, I just hate this planet. All right, so Doopy Fall for it says, I've also heard you ask about the Yankton experiment. Well, yeah, I've only talked about 300. I mentioned it about 300 times. Let's see. One reason why Eddington's specific experiment hasn't been replicated could be the practical challenges involved. No, there really aren't any practical challenges. Solar eclipses of the right type are rare. Well, except 4 years ago, we had one over North America that was perfect. It was a 12 noon eclipse, which is rare. Perfect. I mean, you can't get better than 12 noon, shortest distance through the atmosphere. Okay, and nobody did the experiment. Right over North America. Right over the big giant hunk of North America. Lots of telescopes, lots of equipment, lots of fancy crap. No, nobody did it except some amateur with a little puny, piece of shit telescope. And he didn't even bother doing the experiment correctly, where he didn't bother using real film, and he didn't bother using real photos. Use star charts. Pile of shit. Anyway, are rare. So we know that that rare argument is garbage because, yeah, we had like the perfect eclipse 4 years ago, right over North America. So rare or not, the fact is you had the perfect eclipse and they didn't do it. Okay, and observing conditions need to be perfect. Yes, that's the other part of it. They actually were perfect observing conditions. The weather was absolutely perfect. 12 noon eclipse and absolutely perfect blue sky weather for measurements to be accurate. So just another lie. Okay, let's pretend we never had the opportunity to do the experiment, when no, you had a perfect opportunity 4 years ago. On the other hand, astronomers can observe gravitational lensing. So everybody knows that every single time I make this argument, I point out that there's 400 times better resolution from space. 400 times. 400, not 4. So I say not 4, not 40, okay, 400 times easier to do from space, and you don't need an eclipse. All you need is 5 frickin' minutes, 6 maybe, to do a nice little time-lapse photo, blah, 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 all done. Too simple even. It's just almost too simple an experiment from space. Never been tried. We're supposed to believe no one's even tried it. Okay, just such lying. On the other hand, astronomers can now observe gravitational lensing. Now, they've been doing that for a long time, and guess what? All of those lensed images are mathematical crap. And they're all opposing Einstein's simple statement that, a gravitational effect caused by an object behind another object, okay, is only going to create a little shard of light because gravity is an inverse lens. As you get closer to the center, it magnifies more, and as you go further away, it magnifies less. Exactly the opposite of the required lens. So you could only have one single little place in space, one distance, where you could get the light to be bend in the right direction. You could never produce images. So you couldn't make like all the stars in a galaxy can't be lensed. It's not a mathematical truth. There should be huge distortions going one way and the other way, if at all, if you could see the little objects at all. So just keep denying those physics. I mean, that's real physics. It's a real fact that the gravitational lens is inverted. But yes, just keep propagandizing. Just keep lying for your science. All right. Now, observe gravitational lensing, where light from a distant source is bent around a massive object like a galaxy cluster. This phenomenon is essentially the same as what Eddington observed. So first off, it's not the same because, frankly, Eddington is clearly image data. Okay, so you can see the whole sun. Okay, you can see the whole object behind, again, as Einstein pointed out, you're not going to see whole objects with gravitational lensing in space, okay, because the gravity bends the light the wrong way. All right, but on a much larger scale. So, all of the images are mathematical crap, okay? Sphericality disappears. We know that gravity tends to go spherical, especially massive gravity. So all of this is just blah, blah, blah. Dark matter proves. Yeah. Sorry, you're just a dupe, okay? So why would they bother repeating an experiment to demonstrate something that's already so thoroughly demonstrated? So again, it's about light being bent twice as much by gravity, and it's about having real evidence that it's gravity alone. Now, obviously, if you're shooting light through a star cluster or a gigantic cluster of galaxies, you have no reason to believe that there aren't particles in all kinds of places within that gravitational field, and therefore you're shooting the light through scatter, and scatter goes everywhere. So obviously from any location you'll see the distortion. So it's not quite the same experiment. The idea is to do the experiment outside the lamb of the sun, where there's no bullshit to get in the way, and you have clear viewing, and to actually prove gravity bent the light, and the light wasn't bent by some other bullshit in the way. Okay, so this is just such jargon, just such lies. All right, something that's already thoroughly demonstrated through better means. Yeah, so it's not better means. You can't get more direct. Okay, they even look. Einstein even pointed out you could use Jupiter. You know, the only problem is Jupiter's 100 times less gravity. But you have 400 times better resolution from space, so you're 300 times better off than Eddington was. 300 times better off, and you could just use Jupiter. Okay. Using other advanced technology, question mark. So that was a question? I don't think that was. So why would they bother? Oh, so why would they bother? Because it's a different experiment, and it's an important distinction. And frankly, it's the only way you're going to prove this twice as bent by thing. Okay. In addition, the development of radio astronomy allowing a very precise measurement. So we know radio is unprecise. So that's another big joke. It's a big giant wavelength compared to light. I mean, it's whatever, 350,000 times bigger wavelength. You can't see anything. Okay, essentially small. All right. Let's see. Very precise measurements of the bending of the light. So just more bullshit. So just more statements about what you did when you didn't really do it. And you go look at the actual data, all right, and it isn't there. It isn't there in the sense that this isn't about stuff outside the corona of the sun. This is about stuff inside the corona of the sun. This is about shooting light through the part of the sun where there's a ton of electrons, a ton of charged particles, and you shoot the light through it and it scatters to almost everybody. Everybody gets to see the distortion. I mean, it's just such bullshit as a theory that, of course you can bend light with particles. The argument is, did you bend the light with gravity? Okay, and that you haven't proven. Radio waves are a form of light by the sun. Gee, aren't you so informative? What would we do without you? Whoever? Oh, I just had no idea. They're not waves, by the way, retard. So whatever, they're corpuscles. These measurements are much more accurate, so just more bullshit. No, they're much less accurate. The Eddington experiment is much more accurate. Much more likely to show a real fact, not an artifact. Okay, so just lie some more than what can be achieved by observing sunlight during a solar eclipse. And again, that's not the argument. The argument is there's 400 times better resolution from space. We've been in space 50 years. Why hasn't the experiment been done when it only takes 5 minutes and you don't need an eclipse? Oh, that's right. It hasn't been done because it can't, every time they try, it doesn't work. I think that's the simple answer. That's probably the simple answer. It's all a big sham. Big fake, a big phony, a big fraud. Light isn't bent by gravity, and it certainly isn't bent for twice as much. I mean, it's just a big pile of bullshit. I mean, there's no logic to it. The smallest thing, the fastest thing in the universe is bent for no good reason twice as much. No logic applied to it, no reasoning, nothing. It's just some kind of universal rule that we can't observe. But it's a rule, even though we can't observe it. Oh, okay. Fuck you. Jesus, what a pile of mush. Alright, let's see if we can go find some other crap to respond to. Ooh, yes, well, I found a comment, but it's just, this is loop-de-doo nutteroo, I guess. Crazy little mushy talk, so we'll just see, there's probably all kinds of useless turd in here. Kinetic energy deals with infinitesimals. No, it doesn't, frankly. I mean, it's just a silly thing to say, frankly. I mean, big giant things have kinetic energy. It's just silly. They have a motion, They can have all kinds of infinitesimal other kinetic energies inside of them, but the fact is they have a motion kinetic energy. which is potentially all the potent. That's not a real sentence. Kinetic energy deals with infinitesimals, which is potentiality of the resistors in free space. So there's resistors in free space. Ooh, isn't that interesting? Like atoms. I don't know. Atoms are resistors? I don't know what he's saying. Just because there's no energy as such. So more baby talk, nonsense crap. And Galileo examined it perfectly. Galileo hadn't quite figured out what Newton figured out, which was the gravitational constant. So, he wasn't quite perfect. Clearly, he had figured out the thing that was important was that it was a time-dependent force. Okay, there can be no friction between atoms because free energy can't even be proven. So more nonsense. Of course, the friction between electrons and protons, they don't have a problem. They're not traveling on roads. They are in fact in free space. So just like there's no friction in space either, there's no friction for atoms. Yes, true enough. By particle accelerators. So whatever this free energy can't be proven. So I don't understand exactly what you're arguing. They don't prove anything with accelerators, frankly. Yeah, that's probably the best statement you can make. On this basis, Einstein is saying there is evidence. So Einstein didn't say any of this, so you're just lying. On this basis, Einstein is saying there is evidence in predictions, but not in atomic force. Where did Einstein say this? Okay. That's why QM can't be disproved. Of course, it can be disproved. And I don't know what quantum mechanics has to do with kinetic energy, frankly. They're really not the same subject. Quantum mechanics is about waves of mush that get entangled and superimposed. It's about randomizing the universe in some dopey manner. It's about pretending that somehow nothing knows where it is. Bullshit. Okay. It's atomic, and we can't observe the atomic scale fairly because it's possible that it is infinite without free space. It is infinite without free space. Well, whatever that baby talk is. Just throwing words together. This must be, what's his face, the nut. Okay, so Einstein tried to give an abstraction to free space and failed. Einstein was full of shit. It's unfortunately about space altogether. So he basically invented another ether, and he wouldn't call it ether, but he claimed that, yeah, well, what else is it? If it's a bendable space, then it must be something, so I guess it's ether. Because doubling your energy isn't possible in momentum, whatever that means. All right, Einstein trying to give an abstraction to free space and failed because doubling your energy isn't possible in momentum, whatever that is, but energy only. So, again, just more mush. Something weighs twice as much, it really weighs 4 times as much. 1 + 1 = 4. Okay. We only have a recessive outlook of energy because we can't fairly predict the particle's acceleration accurately. So just more nonsense when, of course, we can. So more nonsense. Because it can never be equal to the last, since atoms are always unpredictable on the observable level. So atoms really aren't unobservable. There aren't enough quantum effects to make atoms themselves unobservable. So that's just nonsense. Theorizing, the fact is they're really small, and that makes them unobservable. Okay, you can't bang a big giant photon, okay, something with thousands of atoms worth of polarization off of a single atom, right? No chance. Theorizing an equal exchange for atoms is impossible. Whatever this is. Einstein says because it's different every time. I don't believe that the Eddington experiment proved wave-particle duality. So how bizarre is this? I don't believe that the Eddington experiment proved wave-particle duality because they made the experiment with fixed results. It's just too silly. It doesn't have anything to do with wave-particle duality. has to do with bending light twice as much. I don't think they have fully observed it from space, like you said, whatever this means. But like I said, God doesn't play dice, whatever this baby talk is going to be, because you can't know when Galileo says you can. But again, that's not true for clumps of energy. You can never fully predict the results because it's happening at the atomic scale, which oscillates, but not infinitely. However, in QM. So just more made up baby talk. All right, I'm not even going to bother with the rest of this. It's just, come on, Tyler, just leave me alone, please. Go play somewhere else. All right, let's see. When magnets are given momentum and their north poles repel, okay, so two magnets are banging into each other, or one magnet is heading for another magnet in the repulsive position, which brings both magnets to a stop. So, what are you talking about? They bounce, you know. Yeah, so for a tiny millisecond they stop, and then they bounce just like a spring. DS, where is the momentum? It's in the force between the two magnets. So I've already explained that. I mean, I've shown simulations. I mean, magnets are excreting a force, okay, and the force can either be invisible, south-north, or visible, north-north. So when it's in that visible condition, both sides are shooting bullets at each other, and they're both made out of steel, so the bullets reflect. So any force they're pushing with gets stronger and stronger as they get closer and closer together. And so they stop, and then they're pushed apart, just like a spring. Not very complicated. All right, so we've read the other piece of crap comment from before, what the old chat bot has to say. Anyway, so I'll pause and see if there's anything else. All right, so these are comments on Michael's video regarding the relativity argument, trying to make framed arguments about fuel consumption and how basically, as I pointed out in my argument, I think the simple argument is it doesn't matter how skewed my view is of the fuel consumption needle. That you can't change with perspective. Perspective can't change what the needle reads. Half tank, full tank, those things you can't change. So no matter what you do, the rate of fuel consumption is independent of perspective problems regarding something moving towards you or away from you. All of that nonsense that takes where time can distort your perspective, like how long it takes the information to get to you can somehow make it seem like, okay, when it really isn't like at all anyway. All the relativity arguments are just nonsense. There are events in the universe that are simultaneous, okay, bang, bang, happens at the same time. And because you're standing close to one and you see it first, doesn't change that the events were simultaneous. It's just too silly an argument. But anyway, so this guy who provoked the question that he responds to, okay, I haven't been able to provoke such responses. Thanks a lot, Michael, for taking the time to answer my question. I had actually envisioned, I wish you would spend a little time explaining why the Eddington experiment hasn't been done from space. I mean, why this isn't on the NASA's agenda. Okay, I had actually envisioned all this in terms of spaceships, right, so it's exactly what I did. And if you use spaceships, it's a lot clearer, frankly. Not cars on Earth. I suppose similar reasoning would apply. Well, it really wouldn't, okay, to the material that gets blasted out to create thrust. No, there's no way to make a relativity argument. The thrust isn't going to change. There isn't any way to pervert the experiment by creating a third object that is going to be affected by the thrust. So there's no way to make a mess out of this. The thrust will have to be the same from all perspectives. But anyway, he's already established that is the truth. That you can't use frames to change how much fuel you're using. So you have to use the same fuel in all the frames. And the simple argument is because of their silly numbers, because it takes more fuel to go from 20 to 30 and from 30 to 40 and from 40 to 50, because each one of those takes 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 times more fuel, that yes, the relativity argument gets completely blown out of the water by the kinetic energy theory. Because the kinetic energy theory means you would see the difference. Because frankly, you can't tell how fast anything's really going in the universe. And there'd be all kinds of ways you could prove it just because you'd know the difference. You'd see it on the fuel. The fuel would be consumed at a faster rate if the object is in fact, going faster. If it's going from 20 to 30, it's going to use more fuel. If it's going from 70 to 80, it's going to use a lot more fuel. It's just not a 10 difference. So the only way that relativity can stand is momentum has to be true. And the fact is that your fuel consumption is just twice the speed, twice the fuel. 3 times the speed, 3 times the fuel. Just as Newton said, frankly. I mean, Newton said it. You want to go twice as fast, you apply twice the force. You want to go 3 times as fast, you apply 3 times the force. None of this, if you want to go four times as fast, 16 times the force. Newton clearly didn't say that. Let's see, there's momentum in the opposite, and thus kinetic energy in the gas cloud could get spewed behind. So again, you don't have to use a gas cloud. You can use discrete particles. You can use things that we know come in clumps, like photons or some other form of energy that's clumpy. And then you have to excrete a certain number of clumps at a standard speed of clumps. If we think of the plume in terms of some block of negative mass with opposite velocity, maybe we can come up with a similar set of calculations that show as long as you analyze the whole system, you find it takes the same amount of energy to achieve the effect from start to finish. So 0 to 20 from initial reference. So again, but his point is that if you're going from 0 to 10, you use 1 unit of fuel. When you go from 10 to 20, you use 3 units of fuel. So that's the whole paradox created, and he's like ignoring his own paradox, which is funny. But if I spend a liter to catch up with my buddy who's cruising by in his spaceship at 10 meters per second, I have to chat with him about life. He might forget about any broader system. I don't know. Unlike Earth, the plume I generate is behind me and causally disconnected from all intents and purposes. Yes, of course. And the only thing that mattered was what you expelled. And that decides how fast you're going. So what the expellant hits is irrelevant. Whether it spins in Earth or not is irrelevant. My buddy and I would practically share a frame of reference. If I then asked him how much fuel to go 10 meters per second, he will still tell me I need 3 liters. I'm just saying it's going to be a fact, that you are actually in a frame where you are going from 20 to 30 instead of 0 to 10. And that means you need, 7 times more fuel, 5 times more. I hope I'm not continuing to make some embarrassing noob error. Well, why did you sat there and gave him an out right here in the beginning, and said, well, maybe there's a reason. And then you sit there and argue that, no, I still don't get it. Anyway, made some embarrassing noob error. Otherwise, I assume I'm glossing over a bunch of subtleties that are the stuff of rocket science. So it really isn't the stuff of rocket science, and that's the whole point. NASA doesn't use mv squared. NASA doesn't think it works. It's not what landed the lunar module on the moon. So just understand, when NASA landed on the moon, It wasn't doing a bunch of kinetic energy calculations. It was doing a bunch of classic thrust momentum calculations. All that mattered was how much momentum was it releasing, and that was deciding how much it was going to go in the opposite direction. But hopefully you can appreciate why I still struggle to wrap my head around the concept of KE. Interesting that he has trouble wrapping his head around it for a reason that I just would... Why don't you just make the argument? Why don't you just ask him, do you really think it takes 16 times the fuel to go 4 times faster? Do you really think that happens on in any part of the universe? And again, you can make the numbers even more preposterous, right? 5 times is 25. You want to go 5 times faster, 25 times the fuel. Gigantic. The numbers just get worse and worse and worse. Alright, so Mindless Marvel says, this is a great video. It's a bunch of convoluted mathematics, period. I actually came across the question myself when discussing geocentrism with someone. Eventually, I worked out the same answer. Oh, yeah, marvelous. You're just so miraculous, Mindless Marvels. Although it involved an object launched off another larger object. So even though it wasn't the same experiment at all, I came up with the same answers. The numerical examples were pretty illustrative. So that was nice as well. It was? Oh, I didn't see the illustrative part. Anyway, I would have gone to the algebra and left there. I would have gone into the algebra and left there. Don't know what that means. He clearly, to start with, didn't really explain what the paradox is implying. And it's just simply implying that from one frame, the guy's going from 0 to 10. And in another frame, he's going from 10 to 20. And you have to use different amounts of fuel to do those two different things. And he's basically, though, saying, but you can't lie about what the gas tank has in it. That can't change. So you're stuck with picking, and he's basically saying that it's always the faster frame. But we don't know what the fastest frame is. I mean, they both could have been going, the whole universe could have been moving 10 meters per second in a direction. So again, the whole thing was just bullshit. So Piro, the moron, says, wait, is this why they used to say rocket science is difficult? So again, it's really not rocket science. He was using the earth and tires and wheels. So again, just more bullshit. Okay, fuel consumption for cars. So apparently this is some old guy over 80. And he's just so much of a retard. He posts a link to a kid video on fuel consumption. How to calculate how much fuel you're using. Miles per gallon. It shows you that, well, you take how many miles you went, and then you figure out how many gallons you used, and you divide the miles into the gallons, and there you go. I mean, that, too stupid. It doesn't have anything to do with kinetic energy. Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with their assertion that it takes 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast, and it takes, it takes, where are we? 9. It takes 9 times the fuel to go 3 times as fast, and it takes 16 times the fuel to go 4 times as fast. It has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with the, look, I started this with just saying simple things like, look, the physics says that 8-pound bowling balls going twice as fast can knock down more pins. They have more energy. And it's clearly not a fact. It clearly doesn't happen in reality. Because bowlers don't do it. They don't throw lighter things. Because it doesn't work. It doesn't happen. Alright. So, I guess we'll leave it there and call that a video. That's enough. Yeah, 40 minutes. Yeah, there's really nothing else to discuss. So, we'll see if physicist Michael does the lever stuff, then we'll have something, or we'll see if he ever gets around to answering any of my poses and questions and quandaries and paradoxes. And we'll see what happens. Blah, 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 blah. So, till the next time and such.